Hey everyone, today I wanted to give my honest opinion on sales engineering boot camps. And I say this as someone that's been in tech now for almost a decade. I was previously an engineer, and now I've been in a direct tech sales role for the last 4 years. I work with sales engineers every single day. I've seen their backgrounds. I've seen what it took for them to get to where they are today. And I just want to set proper expectations today. I have no really problem with boot camps. I run my own for the SDR position, and I've seen a lot of success there. But I do see a lot of these sales engineering boot camps that are a stronger financial commitment. They're asking a lot of your time. And I think, again, it's a combo of both them and yourself really understanding what these are going to do for you. But I see a lot of people maybe with improper expectations or not really understanding even the sales engineering role in the context of a tech company. So I hope you get a lot out of this video and really, helps you make a decision one way or the other. I'm not saying they're bad, but make an informed decision, one that's realistic and one that's going to help you really progress your career. And really the first thing I'd say is fundamentally at like 99% of tech companies, and to be clear, like tech companies, I mean rather engineering heavy companies, things that are selling tools to developers, to engineers, rather complex products. The sales engineering role is almost never, like 99% of times, an entry-level role. And again, it's not to say that you can't take a boot camp and get a role, but if you're doing a completely different career, say real estate or retail sales, or you're a chef or something like this, right? I think you should really exercise caution when thinking that a sales engineering bootcamp is going to take you from no tech experience whatsoever to a sales engineering role, especially one at an engineering type of company. And again, just to set expectations and help you understand, right? Engineering companies as a whole, they hire engineers with no experience that have taken boot camps, but the sales engineering role specifically really benefits from someone having a couple of years of experience before getting into the role, and I want to explain why. Because again, as an engineer, if you've taken a coding boot camp, you can get really good at a couple of different tool sets. You can help do some really good stuff on a specific tool, right? But when you're getting into an environment where you're selling your tool, you're competing against other tools, your tool is also going to be one of 20 plus tools that your customer would have to manage. It gets a lot more complex rather quickly, and you can really get in over your head if you don't have industry knowledge, you've never been an engineer before on a team. It just gets really difficult to have an authoritative opinion at the table. And again, it's not because you're not capable of it, because again, when I'm talking to a customer, even if I know everything about our tool, I'm one of the best engineers on our team, I have maybe 6 months of experience with this bootcamp and just now as an engineer, the real challenge becomes when you're selling to a large organization or even a small one. Like all of us see applications on our phone, we think that's tech and that's great. Under the hood, there's like 20 plus services that are actually supporting that and actually making that real. And so one component, sure, is like you can know everything about a tool and be an effective sales engineer from, as an example, the ability to demonstrate its capabilities. But when you're driving a really complex sale, when you're driving mission critical sales, and we're talking hundreds, 200,000, 500,000, $1 million worth of software, it's really difficult to be effective if all you know is that tool and you don't understand more broadly how it fits into their environment, how their engineering team is actually going to engage with this tool, how it's going to really fit. And, for instance, could adopting this tool impact the way they use a different tool entirely? And engineers that have a couple of years of experience are able to see these things. They've experienced kind of the trade-offs between all of these different tools. They can speak to how one tool fits into an entire tech stack way better than an entry-level engineer that's just focused on coding one specific thing. You can be as tech savvy as you want. You can have all the skills that you need. But when you're developing internally, there's a lot of processes in place that really can ensure engineers can't do too much damage. When you're on the phone with a prospect, when you're trying to sell them a complex solution, you have very limited number of times to make a strong impression, to really come across as experts and really solve a very huge problem. And it's just difficult to have that perspective and experience if you're brand new into your engineering career, whether you've taken a boot camp, whether you have an engineering degree like myself. You just have to get the reps in to have that level of understanding and ability to understand not just the immediate problem at hand, but how it fits into the broader ecosystem and challenges of a business. And I think this also leads to my second point, which again, is not saying sales engineering bootcamps are good or bad. I do think at highly engineering, highly technical companies that a sales engineering role is never going to be entry level. But there are entry-level sales engineering roles. I just want to set expectations on the types of companies that might hire for those. Because there's a lot of sales tools, there's a lot of SaaS platforms that are tech under the hood, but as an example, you might be selling software to accountants. You might be selling software to salespeople that traditionally don't always have a technical background, and in that case, it may be okay, because you're going to be slightly more sophisticated understanding the technology and how to use a tool, how to integrate it with different things, but you're not writing code, you're not trying to solve a very complex engineering problem, but you are helping someone who's maybe, again, a little bit less technically savvy than you understand how to use this tool rather quickly. And in those cases, I do see sales engineering roles being effective. But lastly, tying this all together on this point, those low-code, no-code types of companies are great, but you can't really necessarily go from a company like that and then become a sales engineer at Amazon. So again, it can be a very lucrative and great career path, but just understand that if you have no tech experience whatsoever, you've never really written code, you've never been an engineer, it's okay. But you're probably going to have to become a sales engineer at these no-code or low-code platforms. And again, short of continuing education, the sales engineering bootcamp could be a great start to that. But if you break into a low-code or no-code company, you'll probably have to get extra education on top of that to learn how to code. They might want you to be an engineer for a year at another company before you then become a full-time sales engineer selling a very complicated engineering type of product. That's kind of my overall thoughts, and I think a core understanding that is missing in messaging with these sales engineering bootcamps. And sharing from my own experience as well, I do want to talk about the average background that I see of many sales engineers, because I've worked with sales engineers that do have an engineering degree, and I've worked with some that do not technically have a degree. But I will tell you, many of them, probably 90+%, do have a formal degree, and the ones that did not were self-taught programmers. They maybe took a boot camp, but they also spent time as an engineer or a developer for, call it, 3 to 5 years before making that change to a dedicated sales engineer. Or as an example, in my case, when I was an engineer, I was a support engineer, so I was still customer facing, but it wasn't focused on sales at all. It was very focused on solving problems, helping with support tickets, things of that nature. I've seen people go that path where they become a support engineer, they start getting a combo of that technical and customer facing experience, but they still do that for maybe 2 to 4 years before ultimately becoming a sales engineer. And during that time that they're a support engineer, they're also taking some supplemental education, they're learning how to program more in depth, they're taking some relevant certifications for the types of role that they ultimately want to break into. To be honest with you, I've never seen someone with a sales engineering bootcamp go straight from the bootcamp to becoming a sales engineer at any of the companies that I've worked at. Not to say it's impossible whatsoever, but just setting realistic expectations. I've seen one person before, and again, we're talking about maybe 20 total that I've ever worked with. I've seen one of those 20 that had a coding bootcamp and broke in as an associate sales engineer at a database company that I used to work at. I have seen it before. And again, when you keep in mind that there's probably less total people taking boot camps than the formal college path, those numbers kind of work out. But I do see people, and if there's any takeaway from this video, it's not to discourage you, it's to set realistic expectations. If you have zero experience whatsoever in tech, you have zero coding experience, you have zero engineering experience, I don't think you can go from zero to bootcamp to sales engineering job realistically. Like, you might be able to find your way in there, but as an example, and I've had people on my channel that have done this, there are former engineers that I've worked with, there are people that had an unorthodox background that became an SDR because the barrier to entry for a tech sales specific role is usually lower than sales engineering. They became an SDR for a year, for 2 years, they promoted maybe to account executive, and they made it very clear when they were at those companies that they wanted to transition to sales engineering. Over the course of being effective as an SDR, over the course of learning more and more about the technology itself, they were able to transition, as an example, from SDR to sales engineer. But a lot of times it wasn't because they had this boot camp that was the stamp of approval. It's because they proved themselves as an SDR. They broke into a tech company in the first place, and they made it very clear and fostered great relationships internally at that company and said, hey, over the next 12 months, I would like to become a sales engineer. I know there's a lot I need to learn, and I want to work with you to make that happen. And that, I would say, as a whole, again, if you have zero experience, I would actually go the SDR path as opposed to sales engineering boot camps or things of that nature. I would break into a tech company, or maybe even in customer support, all of these different types of roles you can break into. I would then find an engineering manager once you've proven yourself, once you've been there for a bit, and say, hey, I've really liked this company. Over the next 12 months, I want to transition to a sales engineering role, and I want to learn from you what are the things that I need to do to prepare myself, and then set up regular meetings with them. Start working your way towards that position, but it's really, really difficult to go from zero to sales engineering. So again, in summary, I don't have anything against these boot camps whatsoever, and I know they've had some success stories. Like, they've had people that have done well, but if you're at zero, you have no tech experience, you've never been in a customer support role, you've never been in a support engineering role, you've never been in an SDR role, it's gonna be really, really difficult for you to go from zero to sales engineering like that with just a boot camp. And I think you'd honestly serve yourself better trying to break in at a more entry-level role like a customer success representative or an SDR as an example. Cut your teeth there for maybe 12 months and start to then plant the seeds that can help you transition, and expect that you're gonna have to continually educate yourself as you go along that journey. So I appreciate it if you've made it this far. And again, I don't want to discourage you from making that decision and going that bootcamp if it's a great fit, but I do think realistic expectations are important. And again, I have no stake in this. I'm creating a YouTube business here. I don't even want to, hate on the people that are building those businesses, but I think sometimes the people they partner with, maybe they're not, honing in and restricting the types of messaging from the content creators and otherwise that are putting messages out there. I do think that some, not all, but some people have maybe misportrayed how easy this career is, or how easy it is to break in as a sales engineer overall. And again, it's not to say it's impossible, but for a 4-month boot camp, if you have no experience, when there's many other ways you could go about it, I think it's really worth considering before you invest all that time and money and just think that I'm gonna do this boot camp, I'm gonna follow exactly what they say, and I'm gonna break into a sales engineering career paying me tons of money, right? So I hope that helps, and wish you the best. If you're on this journey, I hope you make the decision that's right for you. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. I'm happy to help and shed some light with my own experience, and appreciate the time as always. Thanks.